So welcome everyone to our second edition of our Future Leaders for the summer. Today we have Kathleen Owings with us, and Kathleen has a great story about her journey into the career of financial advising and how she got there and her success story. So Kathleen is based out of Colorado Springs, and we are thrilled to have her with us today. So just a reminder, if you have not been on the live presentation yet in this session, please feel free to use the chat feature or Q&A feature. So as Kathleen is talking and you're hearing things that that spark an interest in you, go ahead and put that in the chat, and then we'll address all your questions at the end, and we'll actually have an opportunity to chat with Kathleen and get to know her a little bit better. So Kathleen, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Emily. And thanks to you that are joining me here today. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to, as Emily said, learn a little bit about my journey and my story into the insurance and financial services industry. It's a little bit different, I think, than some people. So hopefully you get something out of it. And what the intent is, as Emily said, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. I'm happy to address at the end. I'll also give you my contact information. So if you have questions in the future, you can always come back and find me. So next slide here, Emily. Okay, so in today's discussion, I'm going to talk about, as I said, my journey. It's a little different and unlikely than most people that you might see. I also want to talk about the benefits that you do find in the financial services industry. I'll talk about my background. I know insurance side, the investment side, and financial planning, but there's so many different parts and pieces to this industry. So I'm happy to talk about those. And then what I want to discuss with all of you is, how do you know if it's the right fit for you? I mean, of course, until you really get into it, you don't know if it's going to be perfect, but this is my 16th year in the business. So I've seen a lot of people come, a lot of people go, and sharing my experience and what I found, and really the personality traits and what I have found help me be successful in the business. And then I want to talk about your individual situation, kind of keeping your own house in order, and then we'll wrap up with questions. Next slide, Emily. Okay, so here is my journey. I grew up in New York. As Emily said, I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado, but I grew up in New York, just outside of New York City in Westchester County, if you're familiar with that area. And near there is a college called the United States Military Academy. At a very young age, I was about 13 years old, I had a cousin who was going there. And we visited John, and quite frankly, I was caught from the beginning and wanted to go there at that age. I saw what the cadets were doing. I thought it was really cool. I was very involved in sports, very involved in school. So at the age of 14, that became my goal. And my only goal through high school was to attend West Point. Now, it was not an easy journey, and I'll talk about my career path in financial services as well. It was not easy. I actually almost didn't get in. You have to get a nomination in which to get into West Point, either your congressman or your senator. Now, in this case, in the middle photo there, you can see, I don't know if you can tell, and you guys are much younger than me, but the gentleman on my right, your left, pinning on one of my bars, is Vice President Al Gore. And he's the one that gave me my nomination. That was through the administration office. I was not going to get in the traditional route. And I, again, ended up getting the nomination from Vice President Gore. He happened to be the speaker that year at my graduation. So we reached out to his office and he pinned on my bars. Then from there, so I graduated from West Point. It was the only school I applied to. I'm a little stubborn. And after that, I served in the Army as a Corps of Engineer officer. I did meet my husband there. He's also a grad. And Mike was a helicopter pilot. The picture you see in the far right was the two of us actually in Kuwait in 2003. And this was after the war had started. So my unit was there before Operation Iraqi Freedom started. We were there through the war and 4 months thereafter. So I did get to see my husband a couple of times when his unit was there. I will say it's a very unique experience seeing your husband or your spouse, but my husband in this case, in a war zone. We were both serving there, and then, redeployed after that and came back we were at Fort Hood, Texas at the time. So really different background. You probably wonder, okay, Kathleen, how did you go from the Army to being in financial services? Well, there's a couple of stops along the way. When I first got out, I used my background in engineering, to be quite honest. I worked for a general contracting company as a project engineer. So I was wearing a hard hat, boots, telling folks on a job sites what to do with asphalt, concrete, curb and gutter, landscaping, all of that fun civil engineering stuff. Quickly realizing this is what you will probably find as you start to, graduate, then get into your career. Some of the most important lessons I learned through those experiences were what I didn't want to do. It's always great to know what you do want to do, but what I learned from that experience was I didn't want to be on a job site. I didn't want to be driving 500 miles a week, but I did enjoy the problem solving of being an engineer and being on that job site. And every day was different. It was never the same. So there you go. Different, changing, and dynamic, but didn't want to be kind of controlled by where I had to go in the location. After that, I was an executive recruiter. I went on monster.com, which I don't know if it exists anymore, but I went to Monster and found a company that was looking for executive recruiters. And the job was 5 minutes from my house. So decrease the drive. And I could really set my own hours, and it was commission based. So I was flipping from W-2 employee, which I've been for a very long time, to commission based. So I made that jump, realized it wasn't the right fit for me. I didn't really like being a recruiter, just wasn't my thing, but I found some boxes of what I liked. And in that job, another recruiter, I was talking to her and she was listening to me and what I was kind of complaining about, to be quite honest. And she said, I think you might be a really good financial advisor. You like math, you like people, etc. She started to tick all of the boxes of what I did like. And so I called a managing director here in Colorado Springs, because at that time my husband were now here in Colorado, reached out to Dan. And the more I heard about the industry and what it took and what you do, it really felt like the right fit for me. I did interview with other organizations I talked to, which was back then just Merrill Lynch and a few others, but realized I wanted to be talking to people not just about their investments, but also about their insurance and 529s and being more of a holistic financial advisor. So I ended up starting with New England Financial back then. That was about 16 years ago. And again, what I found was I had all these jobs that I held in the past of things I didn't like and did like, and this one really ticked all the boxes of what I do like to do. So that is my kind of unusual journey from where I started to where I am now. Then from there, I wanted to get involved in an association or kind of go a little bit deeper. And that's where I found NAIFA. They actually came to a team meeting one day. It was actually for our whole entire organization here in Colorado Springs, and they did a presentation. And one thing I did not mention, when I was in high school, I actually worked in Washington, D.C. on the floor of the House of Representatives. It's what's called a page. They actually still have the Senate page program. The House program has been closed for several years now, but I actually had moved to DC, lived there for 6 months with all these other pages. So I lived firsthand and saw firsthand kind of politics in action. So that has always been a bit of a passion of mine as well. And when I learned what NAIFA does, what the advocacy, I'm like, oh, well, this is perfect. I'll speak to our elected officials, I'll advocate on behalf of the industry and our clients, and then find more folks like myself that are out there across the country. So from that start, just being a member, I joined the local board and I moved my way up the state board for state of Colorado. I have served as Colorado State president. And now currently I do a lot at the national level, many committees. Emily's smiling, she knows. I don't even know at this point how many I've served on it. If I had to guess, maybe 7 at the national, but it could be more than that. But just giving back and service is a really big passion of mine. And then locally, I served as a board of trustee member for our library district. I think libraries are really important. They're key to our education, not just the school systems. So I was appointed, I was actually a city council and county commissioner joint appointment to serve as a trustee for the Pikes Peak Library District. And I did that for 10 years. And I'm currently on the foundation board, which is fundraising, because you are term limited. So at some point I had to come off that board. So that is my journey and a bit what I've done in my career. The structure of my company, just to talk about that briefly, is myself and my business partner, the two owners. The name of our company is Westbuilt Financial Group. And the name is actually a combination of West Point and Vanderbilt, because Peter went to Vanderbilt. So there's two of us, and then we have two assistants who support us. And what we do is we do fee-based financial planning, also managing a significant amount of assets under management, and then also the protection products. So life insurance, long-term care, disability. And then a very small section of our business, we do group benefits like long-term disability, short-term disability, and life insurance for companies, in addition to 401ks. So pretty good breadth of areas that we work with clients on, individual and also small business owners. One thing I do not do, I don't do health insurance. We do have a partner, we broker that out too. I don't do property and casualty. Those in themselves, or Medicare, those in themselves are their own animals. So we do not do those. And we just partner with other professionals that support us in those areas. Okay, next slide, Emily. So here are the benefits. Remember I talked about like ticking those boxes as I was looking at my next career steps. Here's the benefits that I've seen and I really appreciate. There's a ton of flexibility. You know, I talked about my first job when I got out of the Army. Well, even being in the Army, you know, you move around, you're at the Army's disposal, so to speak. And then when I was working as an engineer, you know, I had to be on the job site, wherever that job site was. In this career, you can create your own hours. Now, I would say when you first start out, not as flexible. You're just gonna be working really, really hard. I mean, that's just kind of the nature of the beast, but you do have flexibility in which to do that. You know, maybe your hours need to shift a little bit. My husband and I, we have a 17-year-old daughter. So I've had to deal with, you know, daycare and picking kids up and doing all that, doctor's appointments. You know, I'm able to build all of that into my schedule, which is great when you have a family. And when you're first starting out, you know, you might be thinking about those things and planning for those things. So the second point there, career life blend. I mean, it really is nice. One of those pictures there is from one of my trips to Washington, D.C. with NAIFA. I do, as I said, have that kind of passion, that knack for the political side. So I'm able to, you know, go to that place and also know that I'm advocating for our clients and our industry. So that's really fun to have this area where I can combine different passions and they come very well together. Upside income. One of the things that frustrated with me in the Army, quite frankly, was I'm a very hard worker. Now, most people in the Army are hard workers. However, I started to get frustrated to think, well, you know, I'm kind of getting promoted the same as most people. You might get promoted a little bit ahead, but really you're still capped at the level in which you're promoted to, based on your rank, of course. Well, in this career, it's as hard as you work. That the sky really is the limit. It's the amount of effort you're putting in. And I would say the effort, you need to think of it as a marathon. This is not a sprint. I've talked to a lot of young agents and they're like, well, how can I get to where you are, Kathleen? Like, well, I've been doing this for 16 years. So come talk to me in 16 years. Now, maybe you can do it faster, but it's not going to be overnight. You know, when you see like comedians or celebrities, I listen to a lot of podcasts and they're famous. You don't know them when they started. I was actually listening to one this morning. It was Kevin Hart has one. He was talking to Seth Rogen and they were joking how Seth Rogen, he remembered when Kevin started his production company, Kevin was answering the phone. I mean, we all think about that now. We're like, that's crazy. Why was Kevin Hart answering the phone? Kevin Hart started with no one in his company. He started at the bottom. I've started at the bottom and I even do things today. Paperwork, for example, it needed to get done yesterday. Well, guess who did it? Me. Now, I told you I have assistants, but it's all about, I think, you know, putting in that effort. And again, it's that upside income. It will come, but it's putting it in day after day. And I'm going to talk about this on one of my last slides. It's the same thing with investing. It's dollar cost averaging, putting that time in, and it will compound and build over time, but it takes time. And that's something you need to keep in mind. It's not an overnight success. It looks like it. I might look like it, but it's been 16 years of an overnight. The other great thing is you do get recognition and there's tons of opportunity. And I think that comes hand in hand with the amount of work you put in and the effort. I've been blessed. NAIFA has been a great partner of mine and has promoted me. They have me on podcasts. They helped me. I wrote a book this last year. They've helped me promote that. But I will tell you, I've also given them a lot of my time, and I didn't do it to get back from NAIFA. It's just been this wonderful benefit that I have received. I mean, I've always been a giver and providing service to others, but they've also been a great partner as well. So in a later slide, I have been recognized as one of NAIFA's 440 several years back, because I'm now I'm not under 40. Let's just say that. So you do have those opportunities for recognition. But what I would tell you is don't go into things expecting the recognition. I mean, really, you're going to get more out of things that hopefully you put in, but put in the effort and put in the work, and you will see that come back to you. And the last piece is they're making an impact. That part has touched me in so many lives. Making an impact with my clients has been tremendous. I mean, I have stories upon stories. I was just talking to a client yesterday, and unfortunately she's going through a tough divorce, and I've been walking with her along the way, and that has been pivotal for me, knowing that I'm making an impact in her life and I made an impact in others' lives when they're going through really difficult situations. And if you've ever been through a difficult situation, you're sometimes not thinking clearly, and I know that, and I know that I have to be the calm one. I have to be maybe sometimes someone they bounce ideas off of or unload a little bit. I had some of that this week too, with a client who was just really frustrated with their attorney, and I became the one that they were venting on. That's okay. That's part of the job. Is sometimes you're there to listen. Sometimes you're there to guide. Sometimes you're there to help. I mean, it really is a very rewarding occupation. The other impact for me has been in, the advocacy, meeting with our elected officials. I did work on a bill here in Colorado. It was several years ago, and it was a bill that was positioned to decrease the amount of senior financial abuse, which was a great bill. I mean, we're all advocates of that, but we had to work with the securities commissioner just on some of the language and really the leeway, I should say, that financial advisors had. There was some, initially it was not very attractive for us. It could have been really detrimental. So I had to work with the securities commissioner to kind of change that language, because quite frankly, if he hadn't worked with us, the Republicans in the state of Colorado wanted to kill that bill. They did not want it to pass. And we told, his name was Commissioner Rome, Gerald Rome. We told Jerry at the time, hey, if you want this to pass, we will be a partner with you and work on it. And we did get it passed. I did testify in front of one of the committees there up in Denver, which was fascinating, because at the time the language was not appealing for financial services. So we were actually saying, no, we don't want this to pass. Well, imagine if you can. So when you go to testify, you have all the representatives in front of you. They're lined up on their little podium, if you will. And then you have the rest of us, the public. And then there's one podium where people go to give their 2 to 3, I think it's 3 minutes, maybe. You have a time limit, and you sign in and you say what your name is and what your position is. I was the only one who was testifying no against the Senior Abuse Act bill. So they looked at me like, as I'm walking up, and I knew I was expecting this, as I'm walking up to the podium, I'm like, daggers are coming out of their eyes, because they probably think I'm the worst person ever because I'm saying no. I wasn't saying no to the bill. We were just saying no to the language. And so that experience was really interesting, actually kind of fun. I was like expecting, and as I did get, some of the Democrats really were trying to break me over the coals, which was fine. I mean, I understood what they were grandstanding, but making an impact is tremendous. And I've been able to do it through NAIFA with my clients, and then also my community service, working with the library. I served, as I said, 10 years on that board. I served as president for 4 of those years, one of which we found a new executive director. We had a major fundraising effort, the biggest we've ever had, received one of the largest grants from a local community foundation here called El Pomar. And what that's given back to me, not only did I know I was helping the community, but it's also given me the opportunity to really develop my skills. I mean, I'm giving a presentation to you guys here today. This is not a hard thing for me to do. And it's through all of these efforts where I've gotten better at it. I continue to get better, hopefully. And that's been great for my personal development, my professional development. So the other photo there is with when I was coming off the board of the library, my fellow board members at that party, and just great fellowship there. I mean, I've got folks that we've been, we worked together for some of them for 8 years and got to know each other really well. So that was very rewarding. Next slide, Emily. Okay, so when you start to look at financial services, as I said, I told you those areas I focus in. There's so many other areas involved. You could do property and casualty. You could do health insurance, dental, et cetera. There's so many areas to look at. So when you're looking at the industry, it's really identifying what your career needs are, and then looking at maybe companies that can help you go, find those. And I'll talk about that here in the next slide, but I think it's important to think through these things. I know when I started, I wanted to find an organization that would help on that first bullet there. Oh, really the second two, training, development, and support. I did not want to be on my own. Like Peter and I are our own company now. We've had the company now almost 10 years. So I had 6 years under my belt of learning the business before I really, really became a business, what I would say is a true business owner, when we were out on our own. But I wanted initially that training, development, and support. I didn't have a big enough ego to think I could wrap my arms around this industry and know it all myself. And that's what I did find in New England. They had a really great training program. There are some companies that do it now. This was an older model back then. Remember, this is 16 years ago. So it's a little bit different now, but keep that in mind. Do you want that training, that support? And again, when you're interviewing, asking those companies or those managers, those hiring managers, what is your training look like? What does your development look like? And understanding what they have. Mentorship and study groups. I know there's different ways you can do it. I actually have a tremendous study group through my broker dealer. And I can get into that investment world if you want me to talk about that here in a little bit during our conversation time. But the group I have, it's all female financial advisors from across the country. There's 6 of us. And we get on a Zoom call every single month and have for the last, I think we're on 4 years now. I try to never miss it. I will even tell my husband if it's dinner time, I'm sorry, you're on your own tonight. It's once a month. And then we see each other once a year when all of the women of my broker dealer get together. So this study group's tremendous because I will bring questions to them. Every single month I have a question, or sometimes we don't have questions and we just talk. But I also know if anything comes up, I have people I can reach out to, in between those meetings. And they've been just a tremendous support to me. General practice or specialization, that's what I talked about. I would say we probably specialize more on the individual and small business planning. I told you the areas that we don't do. So it's kind of thinking about it. You may not always know when you get into this career which areas you want to be focused on, but maybe be aware of it, kind of think about it. Designations. So I do have the LACP designation, Life and Annuity Certified Professional designation. And there's so many others out there. I mean, I see some people who have like the alphabet after their name. That's not really a goal of mine to have the alphabet. I would say my only other goal, I want to go back to school and get my master's in the CFP, kind of do those combined. And that's just something that I want to do for myself professionally. But it's looking at those designations and would a company potentially offer any tuition reimbursement? Or if you're a veteran like I am, are there organizations like the American College or universities that have veterans benefits? Or do you have like a post 9/11 GI Bill? So it's keeping those things in mind when you're looking at these opportunities and these companies that you might partner with. Many of them, if they do have training and development, they're going to have some capacity to help you on marketing. That is that's the thing I'm always thinking about. It's not easy to do. Frankly, I don't have someone doing it full time. We probably could have someone doing marketing full time. It is important to have that marketing plan because unlike when I started, there was Facebook and YouTube, but now it's everywhere. There's Twitter. Oh, now we have Thread. Oh, we have this and that. Now, one thing you have to be careful there in the social media part, I have a securities license. And it's something to keep in mind when you do have a securities license. This presentation, I don't know if you noticed on that first slide there, I had the disclosure. So everything I do like this has to go through my compliance department, and they have to okay it. So you have a marketing plan and social media, but it's interesting sometimes when you have these certain licenses, you also have to keep that compliance aspect in mind. And then the last two, products to support your market, again, it's really important. I would say looking at, do you want to be with a captive agency? Maybe you want to be with a Northwestern Mutual, or that's just one of the ones came to the top of mind. But that's something to keep in mind is when I started at New England, we did have house products, if you will. MetLife was our parent company. We had New England products, but we also had the ability to go outside of our company to provide to clients if that wasn't the right fit. So you need to keep that in mind. If you do look at a company that's more captive, are you going to find that a hindrance to you, or are you okay with that? Again, I like having a more and a fuller breadth to provide to clients, not necessarily being limited. Now I'm with an independent broker dealer, and it's pretty wide open what we can do. And the investments, they do have some guardrails, if you will, but it's still pretty wide open. I actually like having the support of the broker dealer because they're doing their due diligence, looking things over. I really don't need everything in the world to provide to clients, because that takes a lot of time, energy, and money to look at everything in the investment universe. So I do like having a partner that is doing a lot of that heavy lift for me. And then the upside, quite frankly, if you will see, as I said, the returns as hard as you put in the work and the time. I remember an older agent when I first started, I was usually one of the last people still in the office pretty much all the time. And he said to me, he's like, I always knew who's going to stay in because they're always the last ones here. Now, it's not guaranteed, but I was the last one. And frankly, of the people that probably joined during my time, I am still the only one that's in. It's just, understanding, again, keeping that in mind, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint, and it's just continuing to put one foot in front of the other. And again, thinking about that compounding interest effect. Okay, Emily. So then when, you've kind of maybe narrowed down the career, the area you want to go, it's looking for that right fit. And you don't always know. I happen to, find the right fit for me with the first company I started with, but it's really doing that research and looking at the company overall. Maybe they have a national presence, but then also talking to the leaders that are at your local level, because that's really the folks you're going to be dealing with. So let's say, for example, again, I mentioned, maybe you want to go Merrill Lynch route, on the investment side. I looked at that, but then I found the local manager here and talked to him and his team. So it's looking, I would say, at those two areas. And then what usually happens, and this is exactly what happened to me, was I called up, both of those managers. And then what they do is they look at you as a candidate. Not only are you interviewing them to see if it's a right fit for you, they're also interviewing you to see if you're a right fit for their culture and also for this business. I'm going to talk about this here in a little bit. It's not easy. You're going to hear no. I still hear no. I'm actually okay with that. I'm blessed that I'm at the point in my career. I think, well, if it's a no, maybe it's not the right fit. Maybe it wasn't the right personality fit. And I just know that I have to get up and work to find that next person. So they will do a candidate assessment. And then asking them what the career looks like day to day, again, at that company, it's going to be different everywhere that you go. I know for me, when I first started out, during the day was a lot of, I would call them like more operational stuff, doing phone calls, calling out to prospects. In the afternoons / evenings, I was trying to do a lot of networking in the community. I had been here for, let's see, I started the business in 2007. I'd only been living here in Colorado Springs for about 4 years, but I was in the Army. So I really wasn't an integral part of the community. I was stationed down at Fort Carson. So I worked on, in those early years, getting to know people in the community, going to chamber events, connecting with different key leaders there, and kind of getting a feel and a lay of the land. And I was very fortunate that I happened to find some really influential people very, very early on who just brought me into their world. Sadly, one of them, her name is Stephanie Finley. And Stephanie, very, very sadly, just passed away. We had her funeral last month. She was only about, she was in her mid 50s, but Stephanie heard that I was interested in politics. And I happened to be talking to a shopkeeper who turns out her husband was the president of the chamber. It was like this really small world. And I was just telling her what I'd like to do and how to help out Colorado Springs. So Stephanie got me involved, and she brought me into the chamber on the political action committee. And we interviewed, what we did was, as a group, there was about 8 of us, and we were to interview all the candidates that were running. So we interviewed potential senators. We interviewed governors for the state of Colorado. We also did all the local, the local offices as well. But we went all the way up to governor and U.S. senators and U.S. congressmen. I mean, that was fascinating. I've interviewed Michael Bennett, who is one of our current senators. Senator Hickenlooper, who at one time was our governor, also interviewed him when he ran for governor and as senator. So that gave me really good connections in the community. I mean, again, it was that political side, but got great connections. So day-to-day is going to look different. Even now, my day looks totally different every single day. I'm doing this presentation with you all. I have a 401k meeting later today. I'm going to shoot a video for a company after this. I mean, if you like that, if you like the dynamic part of it, this is perfect. If you have to be perfect and the same every single day, probably would drive you crazy. So finding out with these companies or this organization, even, and maybe it's not a large company, maybe you join a small company like mine, but finding out what is their marketing plan? What is the business plan? I mean, I think that's an important question. I would be ecstatic if anyone coming to join my team wanted to know what our plans were for growth, because that is very important. If you're not growing, guess what's going to happen ultimately? You're going to start going the other way. So you want to be thinking growth and continuing to expand. And then getting your licenses. So let me talk about this for a minute. So the organization that I joined, most people, and I know it's a little bit different now, so I believe I understand the newer language, so I apologize. But most people back then just did the series, you would get your life and health license. Okay, that was an easy one. So you kind of take that off the table. And then most people just get their Series 6 license, which is like to do mutual funds, for example. And I know you have your SIE now. That's a newer one. So I went the traditional route, but then realized, oh, I want to do more because I want to do fee-based financial planning and deal with stocks. So I ended up doing what I don't think was the smartest thing. And I wish someone had mentioned just do 2 instead of 4. I ended up doing 6, 63, 7, 65. So I did 4 licenses. I could have done it in 2, 7 and 66, but no one mentioned that to me. No one said, oh, it might be smarter if you just go knock out 2 instead of taking these 4. So I would say explore before you start diving into the licenses. Take a little time, talk to some people, explore what licenses are needed and are there smarter ways to do it, because I did not do it the smartest way. I took 4 instead of 2. Was it the end of the world? No, it was not. I passed them, but it just took longer. And those tests are not fun. You sit in a room, you put headphones on, they give you a little whitey board. They're just, no one likes them. So, cutting down the amount of time you're in those rooms with the headphones and the whitey board and just see what might be the smartest way to go versus, doing 4 like I did, not the smartest. And then do they have an established way in which to run the business? If it's a larger organization, they might already have a lot of processes in place that you would need to learn about. Maybe it's a smaller group and you can help create processes. That's a nice thing about being smaller. It's good and bad. I will tell you, we can make changes very quickly. On the flip side of it, we are limited by time and people. Really, those are our 2 limiting factors. So being nimble is wonderful, but we don't have unlimited resources. Sometimes with larger organizations, they're not maybe unlimited, but you have more resources and not as many but not as much ability to make quick changes, not being as nimble. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Go ahead, Emily, to the next one. Okay, so here's one of my favorite things to talk about is what you'll need to succeed. And I've been talking about this and reminding you, this is a marathon. So that's a picture of my husband and I. One of those is at the top of Pikes Peak Mountain, because we do something called the Ascent. And now I've been doing it every other year. I don't do it every year, but it's a half marathon from Manitou Springs to the top of Pikes Peak. So that's a gain of 7,000 feet above sea level in about, well, Mike's way faster than I am, but I do it in like, I don't know, 5 hours or something. That is one of those things you look up, you're like, oh my God, I'm never going to get there. Now, I do get there, obviously, but it's remembering it's one foot in front of the other. Don't stop. So the key is don't stop and don't slow down. Same thing in this business. You might look up and think, oh my gosh, how am I going to get to $1 million round table or quarter of the table or top of the table? And it seems like it's insurmountable, but what I'm telling you is it's not. It just takes time and effort and putting your head down and not stopping, which for some people, not a hard thing to do. But for others, they want that quick fix. How can I get there fast? I don't know a quick fix. So if you're asking me for that question, I don't have that answer because I'm not a quick fix. I'm head down, keep going, don't stop. I also think, so that's the grit. I also think having a passion for this business is really important. If you hear me talking about life or disability, long-term care, you're like, ugh, insurance, it's the worst. Well, maybe that's not the right fit for you then. It's finding that fit where you have a passion and you want to talk to people about it. And again, those products are not the sexiest, they're not the funnest, but I know, I mean, I have stories upon stories how they are impactful and important, and they do change lives, or lack of them changes lives. You know, if a family member passes suddenly and they don't have life insurance, that family's probably in trouble. Or the reverse side of it, if they pass suddenly and they do have life insurance, that can be life-changing. So I think it's having a passion for what we do. I like to remember that I like to do a lot of gratitude thoughts, and maybe it's sometimes quick. You know, maybe I'll have a day where like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired of this paperwork. But then I remember, why am I doing the paperwork? I'm doing this paperwork to serve that family, to make sure they're prepared for retirement, to make sure their kids are going to go to college. So I might have those thoughts, you know, those barriers, if you will, but I remember what is the ultimate goal and who am I serving? So I think that is really important. Of course, number 3, I think that should go unsaid, but I'll put that out there. Having the highest levels of integrity. I mean, we see, unfortunately, we do see, you know, banks that fail, advisors or insurance professionals that are not doing the right things. I think having integrity and being honest is the utmost important thing to do. I just told a client this week, we missed the signature on a form. Like, we didn't put it on the DocuSign. So I had to go back to her. I said, hey, we made a mistake. I apologize for that. I owned it. So we're going to send it back to you. Is that okay? Well, of course she said, sure, go ahead, send it back to me. Not a problem. But it's having that ownership, that integrity, that honesty that people appreciate, that I think is really important. Self-discipline. Look, this business, if you're a squirrel, you can go down so many rabbit holes in this business. You have to know yourself and have really good self-awareness. Do you have self-discipline to stick out the hard times? And when times are good, to be able to focus on what you need to focus on. I mean, you could do trainings all day like this one and get no work done and make no money. You could be the most well-trained person who is broke. So it's having that self-discipline to know what needs to be done to get you to that next level and continue to do it. And it's not easy. I mean, I'm working on it all the time. I have a coach. I have my husband's one of my accountability partners. I mean, I have accountability partners to also keep me focused, because I can easily get off focus. It's very, very easy to do. So it's having that self-discipline to bring yourself back to what you need to focus on. And then being goal-oriented, of course. If you are goal-oriented, perfect place for you. I mean, you have, as I talked about, $1 Million Roundtable. There's different levels. I mean, I love goals. I love them. I like to hit objectives. get to higher levels. It's just how I'm wired. And this is a perfect business if that is also how you're cut out, is to hitting those goals. I also think you don't have to be ruthless about it. I am not. I will never forget one of my first experiences in the business. They used to, in the Army, we called it rack and stack, but they used to rack and stack advisors. Like, you would see everyone's production every single week. And I've always wanted to be like, you know, maybe top 5 or top 10, really, of anything I did. My husband was so happy. We actually went to one course together in the Army. I wanted to be top 10. I was working really hard to get it. I got like 9 or 10. Mike was like one below me. He's like, oh, thank God I didn't beat you. Because he knew how hard I was working. He was doing his thing, but I'm very goal oriented. So back to my story. So they're racking and stacking all the advisors. I'm at a golfing event. And generally speaking, there's mostly men in this business, which doesn't bother me. I'm used to it. Look, I was in the Army. The numbers have been way worse for me. And I'm playing golf with this particular gentleman, and he didn't know who I was. So I generally know who people are. I like to have very good situational awareness. So I knew who I'm playing with. And he's like, oh, you know, who are you? And I was like, I tell him who I am. I was like, oh, are you so-and-so's assistant? I said, no, I'm an advisor. And actually on the list of advisors, I'm above you. So I don't know if he's still in the business. But my point of that is very goal oriented. I'm not sure if he was, and he clearly didn't have situational awareness. The last thing, I think it's really important to be coachable. I do not know everything. I don't pretend to know everything. And if I don't know it, I find those that are the subject matter experts that I can reach out to. Also, as I said, I have a coach, and sometimes phone calls with him are very humbling. I was actually just on a training call yesterday with him and some other advisors. We were role playing. I was horrible. Like, I was really bad we were working on objections. Okay, guys, I've been in the business 16 years. I should be able to field objections, which I can, but the way in which he was teaching me to do it was different than I've done. It's almost like if you play basketball, you always do a layup with your right. Well, now try it with your left. It's awkward. It's weird. You look like a baby giraffe. That's how I felt yesterday. But what he asked at the end of it is like, well, what did you learn? I said, well, I learned I have more to learn and I can get better. So I think it's important to be coachable, because not all of us are perfect. Even the best salespeople, I bet you they've practiced at it and they have coaches to get better, because no one's perfect. So these, I think, are some of the key skills you need in order to succeed in the business. And, you know, it's helped me, and I'm trying to get better every day. So next slide, Emily. Okay. The other thing I love to do, I'm really big on professional development. Right now, I'm a bit of a lull. I haven't found a book that's really grabbed my attention, but if you want to take a screenshot of this, these are some of my favorite books that talk a lot about the last slide that I was just talking about. Grit by Angela Duckworth. It's not that long. It's a pretty quick read. Even Mindset is a quick read. I mean, read through these. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of David Goggins. The guy does, I'm seeing Nathan shake his head. He's a bit of an animal. He's a little crazy and he drops a lot of F-bombs, but I mean, the guy talks about defying odds. And one of my races I did, actually, he talks about like going to pain cave. I had to go to a pain cave. It was my first 50K. Quick story on that. The 50K, I thought, okay, I'm going to be running for 8 hours. That's like someone's work day, right? I fell down in the first 10 minutes of my 50K and smashed my lip open. Thankfully, it did not require stitches. It was just a fat lip, but I could have just turned around and literally walked to the start line, and my husband was there. I've been like, I'm out, I'm done, I'm good. And I got up and I thought, okay, what can I do? Well, I can go to the start line, or I could just go forward one step at a time and just see what happens. Worst case, I'm over course time, or I'm behind on the time and they pull me off course. That's the worst case. Best case, I finish this thing. So I get into it. I'm still kind of like kicking myself. I'm mad that it was like a rock I tripped on. It was something stupid. And at one cutoff, they said to me, okay, you're 3 minutes over. We should technically pull you off the course. And I'm not kidding you. It's like something flipped in my mind. I looked at the guy and said, if you keep me on, I will finish this thing. It was about the halfway mark. And I did. I caught up to my friend who was running, which I couldn't believe. I mean, I did what's called a negative split. So that means my back half of the race was faster than my first half. The first half, my brain was like, not quite there. Back half, David Goggins Pain Cave. Like I turned it on. I'm like, screw it. Oops, sorry. Forget this. I'm going to finish this race. So sometimes that's what you have to do in the business. Be like, forget it. I'm going to do it. These books are my go-to, some of my favorites. And if I had to pick one favorite, I'd probably say David Goggins. I don't know. I think that mental strength is key in so many things. My husband just did a 100-mile race, his second 100-mile race. I'm telling you, if you are physically prepared, the mental part is what's going to kick you in the pants. And that's where you need to bring your game up. And I feel like it's kind of the same way in this business. If you have the skills, you got to get your mental game up. So next slide, Emily. And this one, I'm going to talk, I want to make sure we have time for questions and discussion, but this one I think is so important. Don't be the cobbler with holes in your shoes. Do you guys know what that means? Okay. That means make sure your house is in order. Don't be the broke advisor. Don't be the advisor that doesn't have the insurances you're talking to your clients about. Make sure you get your house in order. One thing I didn't tell you when I met with that managing director, my husband and I actually had an advisor we were working with. We had a 529 before we had our daughter. He was like, you are the weirdest person I've ever met. We're like, well, someday we might use it. We actually used it for my husband's master's when he was going to school. But yes, we were weird. We had term insurance, we had permanent insurance, we had Roth IRA 529. So I had those things in place before I got in the business. So I was a little weird. I admit that. And then when I started the business, I was in my late 20s. At about 29, I said to my husband, hey, let's buy some long-term care insurance because I'm talking to people about it. And MetLife was changing the policy. Let's get something in place. Well, thank God I did, because at 30, 1 year later, literally, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which underwriters really don't like that in their people, in their insurance. For long-term care, I will never get long-term care insurance again. Now I've had to adjust my plan, and that's been 15 years, 14 years. I've had to adjust my plan, which I've done that. But my gosh, now I don't tell everyone at 29 to get long-term care, but make sure that what you're talking to your prospects or clients about, you and yourself have done with yourself and your family. Now, I know you guys are in college now, and you're like, Kathleen, you're crazy. Well, start small. And here's some tips. Keep your debt down. I mean, I don't know all of your situations, but try and keep that down as best you can. When you're talking to someone, when you're talking to a prospect, you smell a little desperate, right? If you really need that sale, I'm telling you, if you don't, there's less stress. It's an easier conversation. Start saving now. Again, just have those emergency savings in place for maybe your car going out or needing to cover your school tuition. I'm a big proponent of tracking your money. I do it once a month, the first of the month, and kind of see what we have, where everything is. I've an Excel spreadsheet I made, but there's so many apps out there you can utilize. Just kind of know where your money's going. I reminded my daughter, 17-year-old, I'm like, do you know how much money you spend at Dutch Bros? That's a coffee shop here in Colorado. A lot. She spends a lot on coffee, but it's her money. I would probably not do that. I talked about my personal situation with long-term care, but really think about getting your insurances in place. It's so important. I mean, when the younger you are, the better it is to do it, because as you age, you just never know, things come up. And then that last piece, practice what you preach. I tell clients, I am doing all the things I talked to you about. Now there are some, well, I can't really think of any because I have business insurance. I mean, I really do practice what I preach to my clients. Maybe there's some cases I'm not doing it because it doesn't apply to me, but pretty much everyone else, I'm doing exactly what they're doing. Or in the investments, I tell them I'm using the same managers I'm recommending to you. They're managing my money as well. That gives clients a lot of ease to know that you're in the same boat as them and understand what they're going through. Okay, next slide, Emily. That is all I had. I wanted to leave a little bit of time here for us to chat. If you guys had any questions, I hope this was helpful. There's my email. You have my cell phone. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I would encourage you, as you go through your career, finding people that you can reach out to, finding organizations like NAIFA where you can find professionals like myself that have been now for 15 years doing this, and that will help you along your journey. So Any questions? Thoughts? Nathan?
I actually have a question, a
Yeah.
couple questions actually. One of them was, how did you leverage your military background when you were getting started in the career and building your book of business? I know you mentioned going to the chamber and meeting everyone, but with the military side, how did you leverage that?
It's a good question. I haven't leveraged it. I would say the area I leveraged it more was the college that I went to. So West Point, we all graduate and go into the military. I've been pretty involved with our local alumni association, and actually I would say more involved when I was younger than I have been recently. And that's where I've had the most connections and built the most relationships and had the most clients come out of. Not so much going to like veterans events. For me, it was specifically just going back to my school. So I think everyone's going to be different in that respect. And, in your experience, because again, there's so many folks, down at Fort Carson. I probably could have done more if I wanted to down there, but that was what I went to, was just my university.
So for someone starting out, would you recommend tapping into, for example, I'm a soccer player.
Okay.
Would you recommend like just tapping into that space as it's something that I'm already in, or should I venture out into something different?
I think that'd be a great space to start in, because you understand them, you understand soccer players because you are one of them. So you know what's going through their mind, their mental space. I think that'd be a great place to start. I mean, I'm not sure the needs of, what soccer players would need, but I know like for the folks that I do work with, for example, that are still active duty, I know that I'm not going to talk to them about disability insurance because they can't get it, right? They're active duty military. There's no disability insurance company that's going to write them. So I do know what their needs are. So to answer your question, yeah, I think that'd be a great place to start, because you know what their needs are. I'm not sure what level soccer player you are. We have a local team here called the Switchbacks. So you're going to understand maybe what benefits they have or they don't have, what income looks like, what they might have to do as side hustles. So I think that'd be a great place to start.
All right, thank you. Last question.
Sure.
Can you tell about your book? You
Pardon
mentioned
me?
that
Oh, my book. It's called, yes, thank you for asking. It's called Put Your Money to Work, A Woman's Guide for Financial Confidence. So it's specifically designed to help women. I will tell you that I think there's only guys on here, I believe. Anyone can benefit from it. I mean, I was targeting the women's market, but the stuff that I talked about with the insurance, emergency savings, tracking your money, it's all in the book, because I started having so many similar conversations that I thought I should write a book to speak to people about these topics. And so instead of having the one-on-one conversations, I'm now having the one-to-many and helping them that way. So thanks for asking. It's on Amazon if you want to pick it up. So Kyle, where are you joining us from? I see you sitting there. Oh, hey, thank you, Emily.
I'm joining from Texas.
From Texas. I lived in Fort Hood, Texas. So Colleen, Harker Heights, that area.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't find my unmute fast enough to say, hang on, let me pull this up. And
that's okay. I knew what you're doing. Tyler, where are you joining us from?
Arlington, Virginia.
Arlington, Virginia. I was just in DC there for the flyback. I love Virginia.
Kathleen, he's actually in Falls Church, if you want to be specific, right?
Oh, specifically Falls Church. Okay, I know.
Right?
Actually, I've one of my best friends. We were in each other's weddings, and I stayed in Falls Church. Every time I go to the fly-in, I stay with her for one night. So it's a really nice area.
So I know some of the questions that kind of came up last time were, kind of asking about, what are employers looking for? What kinds of things can our students do to enhance their resume and really capture the attention of a potential employer?
Mm-hmm. I think one, when I look at we have brought some junior advisors in, to bring them into the practice. So I think one, let's talk about, what you're doing in school now, certainly focusing on your studies, doing as well as you can there. In the summer, maybe getting some internship experience, to show that if you're looking to get in this industry, maybe try and find an internship somewhere, whether paid or unpaid, because that shows that you have interest and you are putting some time and effort into looking into the industry. So I think that would be another thing, is maybe summer internships during I'll tell you, like, as someone who has interviewed people, it's always nice when I tell this to my daughter, when you are in the interview, make sure you come with questions. Like, as the interviewer, yes, I'm probably going to talk a lot, and then I'm going to ask you questions and you'll answer them. But it's always great to have that back and forth, or maybe you do come prepared with questions about, like I said, ask them about the organization. What does the growth plan look like? What do you have for development of younger new agents or advisors? Worst case, if you can't think of a question, guess what? We have ChatGPT. Go to ChatGPT and just type in great interview questions. I mean, let AI do that. I didn't have that. Let AI do the work for you. But it's so, what I appreciate and like, and I'm more apt to hire someone who really I shouldn't say it just appears to be engaged, but is truly engaged and truly cares about the organization. Look up the organization online. Again, do a little research and see what they've done. Mention that in the interview. That goes a long way. Again, when I talk to someone, it looks like they've done no research on me. I told you that story about the golfer, right? They've done no research on me, because guess what? I'm doing research on you. I'm going to your LinkedIn. I'm going to your Facebook. That's a whole new realm. I tell my daughter, like, if you don't want your grandma to see something, don't put it on any of those, because guess who's going to be looking? Employers. And we are judging. I will tell you that. So I'd say be engaged, put effort into it, and that goes a long way. After the interview, send an email, send a card. Oh my gosh, you want to knock my socks off? You send a handwritten card. I still do handwritten cards, folks, and send them to people, because most people don't do that. So I would say putting in that extra effort is tremendous and will go a long way.
Anybody else have additional questions for Kathleen? Great opportunity to really hear from one of NAIFA's rock stars, who has really, really defined herself in the business and has a great story to tell. So, as we said with JDR last week, want to make sure that you're connecting with everybody on LinkedIn, make those connections, because, you might not live in Colorado, but Kathleen might know somebody who's in your area, that might be a great connection. So don't be shy, make those connections. But I'll pause for a second, see if there's any other questions.
I'll tell one quick story, Emily, to your point. So I was in, where was I? Oh, I was in Charleston, South Carolina. And I was talking to my Uber driver, and he's like, "Oh, what do you do?" It was me. And actually it was for one of my women's financial advisor events, but we were headed to the beach. So we were like totally beached out. And he's like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "Well, we're all actually financial advisors." Like, seriously? We're like, "Yes, seriously." And he's like, "Oh, that sounds so interesting." And he's talking to us. By the end of the car ride, I had his phone number and his name. And then when I got home to Colorado, I connected him with a NAIFA professional in his area in South Carolina. So look, this was an Uber ride and a guy that was interested. And I had never been in South Carolina in my life. I don't know if I ever go back, but within a week, I had him connected with someone who was, open to have a conversation with him. So to Emily's point, my network, our network, John's network, all the others, because of this organization, is wherever I need to go. It's not limited just to Colorado. I can find someone in Texas. Falls Church is kind of an easy one, but South Carolina, wherever, Hawaii, wherever we would need to reach, we have those connections, which is tremendous. And you could be an Uber driver. You never know. Well, we're right at the top of the hour. So Emily, I'll give it back to you, but I wanted to thank all of you for your time. Please, I have my phone right here. find me on LinkedIn. I will say yes. I mean, if it doesn't have to be today, but I am happy to connect with you. Send me a message. I'm happy to be a resource for you now and in the future. So thank you. Back to
Thank
you,
you.
Emily.
Thank you, Kathleen, and thanks everyone for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you again next week. So next week we've got a panel of advisors who have kind of, as you've already heard John's story, Kathleen's story, but this is going to be a very interactive session to get a chance to talk to them, hear their stories, kind of do a round robin about, where they've been, where they're going, and how they got there, and things that they wish that they would have known when they first got into the business. So really looking forward to seeing all of you back. And if you're watching on demand, we're happy to have you watching on demand. And if your schedule allows, please join us in person. But we will see you next week, same time, same channel, and have a great week. And thanks again, Kathleen, for all of your insights and feedback.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Bye.